Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I saw AOS Coach just did an interview with Jacob Brandon about Cruel Boys. I was halfway through watching it. I was very, very jealous. Not gonna lie, I was messaging AOS Coach and be like, hey man, if you ever need someone to talk about Cruel Boys, like, hey, I'm your man, here's my link, right? Like, check me out. But nope, Jacob Brandon is definitely a better choice for that interview than myself because he is a significantly better Cruel Boys player than myself. But what are you going to do? Thanks to all my patrons. Thanks to Baron of Dice. Thanks to Barbarian for supplying art for the channel. You guys are the real morkiest heroes. Okay, so let's get into it. So this is what the tier list looked like at the end of 3rd edition. I think I did like final tier list videos. So just really quickly here. S tier was Mega Boss on Maw-Krusha. Destroyer, Fasten, Mighty Destroyers. Yeah. Very, very mobile, smashy piece. Loved playing a Maw-Krusha and Big Wah. Yep, big fan, but we're talking Ironjawz here. War Chanter, yeah, I mean, War Chanter was an S tier, at least one, probably more like 2 or 3. Like the plus one Violent Fury buff was just amazing. Weirdnob Shaman was S tier. We were still we were still in like this magical meta, right, with our primal dice, so everybody was taking casters. The Hand of Gork was a lot stronger than teleporting anywhere on the board. He was also a very important piece for teleporting our next unit in S tier, which is the Gorgruntas. Amazing to buff Hoarfrost, Violent Fury, right? Teleport, Mighty Destroyers, 3-inch charge. Like, these things were our pig missiles, and they slapped. Then in A tier, we have the Hyacinth crew and the Gorgrunta Gouja. These guys were good. They just, I think, were a little bit too overcosted in 3rd edition, but they were really strong. Another A tier unit, Mega Boss on foot. This is, of course, doubling up our commands. We also had Destroyer as an artifact, right? Very, way better unit than he is now. Oh my god, so disappointed with the Mega Boss on foot this edition. Brutes were really strong. They just packed a big punch, right? They had a nice 2-inch range, so everything could get in, but they just slapped. They had high rend, right? They just did what they said on the box. Very strong unit. +1 to hit against big stuff, right? Ard boys were also pretty good. You know, like Shield Bash, Rally, like whatever. Ragers were really strong. Being able to run and charge in 3rd was still really good, right? They didn't have first strike, but run and charge was still really strong. So very good A tier unit. Moving on to B tier, we had Kragnos. I think Kragnos was so again, B tier, situationally good. You know, you could play a Kragnos and Ironjawz, sure. Gordrak was B tier if he was a B tier unit, if he was your second Maw-Krusha. Never your first, but always your second. The reason is because you couldn't, like, Destroyer for the Mega Boss Maw-Krusha was an artifact, right? And Gordrak didn't rely on that artifact, right? Because he can't take artifacts. But instead, he had his own 2 weapons that did a really good job of approaching the damage of the Maw-Krusha. But his save, being at a 4-up, was rough. Tusk Boss, big B tier if you want to take a whole bunch of big pigs. Ard Boy Boss was B tier. Again, if you're just like, I want to take a whole bunch of Ard Boys, which wasn't really a good thing to do in Ironjawz in 3rd edition. Zogrock Anvil Smasher. I can't even remember. It's funny because I guess I could pull up like Wahapedia and I guess I can look at what it was in 3rd edition, right? I can actually look up these units because I can't even remember, to be honest, some of them, what they did. I know that Zogrock Anvil Smasher did something similar, but I think the problem was that War Chanter was just so much better. And so why take a Zogrock Anvil Smasher? I can't remember why I put him in B tier. I think I put him in B tier because it was one of the only ways to get access to Mortal Wounds. And so if you were like, I really want to take 6 pigs and buff them with every possible thing I can, like Hoarfrost, Mighty Destroyer, and Zogrock, then I think he's okay. And then we had the 2 war bands. They were okay. It really just came down to points. Like if you had 80 points left in your list, they were an option. And then F tier, the only unit in F tier was Rekkas. And this is, of course, because they did less damage than... Like, they were just always better as Ragers. I think they were the same point cost, or maybe 10 points more. But they were just always... yeah, they were just always better as Ragers. Okay, so let's reset this bad boy. Bam! Let's reset this bad boy. And then, of course, we did lose a couple of units, right? They went to Legends now. And, of course, I am referring to the Iron Skull Boys and to Morgoth's Crushas, right? These sort of named Elite, Brute, and Ard Boy units. But they are no longer in the game, so we're not going to review them anymore. Okay, so we're going to start off with the monsters. We're going to do all the monsters first. And then after all the monsters, we're going to do the other assorted heroes. And then after we do the other assorted heroes, we're going to do the rest of the units. Okay, so we're going to start off with Kragnos. But before we even get there, we have to, of course, make sure that all of our colors are right, because we are, you know, greenskins. Green is going to be our best color. We also need to define our terms, right? Because that is super important. So S tier is going to be any unit that is an auto include in every army. This just like, it doesn't matter when you're building your list, you start with, you know, these units and then you build out from there. A tier is going to be units that are not necessarily like an auto include in every single list, but really, really strong. And when you see them in a list, you're not confused. You're like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, those units are really, really strong. B tier is units that are situationally good. So these are units that if you see them in the list, it's like, oh, I see. Like, I see what this person's doing. Like, they're leaning really heavily into this thing. And then all of a sudden that unit that, you know, is not otherwise very good suddenly becomes good, right? Like, it's the situation that's made this unit good. Or the meta that's made this unit good, right? And by meta, I mean like super local meta. It's like, well, at my store, you know, like there's 5 Gargant players out of 15 players. So it's like, right. So then suddenly running a bunch of anti-monster stuff becomes significantly better. But if you're lining it up against a general meta, it's probably not that strong. And then last but not least is F tier. Now, F tier just means that the unit is unplayable. It means that there's nothing redeeming about this unit, that it doesn't matter what your list is. Those points are always better off spent somewhere else, or also in this edition, another resource that we have is drops. So F tier means, for heroes in particular, it just means like, well, they're not worth the drop, you know, because it's like, it's never worth taking this unit. It's always worth taking another unit. Okay, so we'll start off with the big guy. We'll start off with Kragnos. I think Kragnos is A tier. In Ironjawz, I definitely don't think he's an auto-include, and that's good. I never, ever want to see Kragnos up in S tier, but A tier is actually a really good place for a model like Kragnos to be, and I genuinely believe this. I think this is true of all the big sort of gods like Nagash and Alariel and all of them. They should really be A tier. It should be like the best lists don't run them, but if you do choose to run them, they are really good, they are really strong, and you will feel good about putting them on the table. Yeah. Gordrak and Maw-Krusha. To be honest, I'm kind of thinking right now that with the Maw-Krusha and Gordrak, like, I don't even know what to do with them. I don't even know what to do with them. I have a feeling that they might just be straight bottom of the barrel F tier. Because I don't, like, and we're still relatively early days in this edition, right? So I'm not like 100% like, this is how I feel about them. I've played the Maw-Krusha. I haven't played Gordrak, but I've played the Maw-Krusha on the table 3 times now, and every single time I feel the exact same way. Too many points, he just sort of dies, and he's so squishy. The only way that I haven't played the Maw-Krusha yet, and this is something that I'm gonna try out probably in my next game, is what you do is you stick the Maw-Krusha as your general, you stick a bodyguard unit right behind them. This can either be the Ardboy boss or a unit of Rekkas or something else, but that's kind of what my Discord community, join the Discord, has been thinking lately. Thanks. Big shout out to, oh, I always forget how to pronounce this name. Malavoyja, I think. But big fan, big supporter. Super came up with this strategy. Essentially what you do is you take, like I said, either Rekkas or an Ardboy big boss, and you just stick them behind the Maw-Krusha, and then you put the Maw-Krusha into the mix, and nothing can get to this Ardboy boss because the Maw-Krusha has units on both sides of him, and he just gets that bodyguard, and so for as long as he's in combat. So I'm thinking this might be a really good thing to do with a Maw-Krusha, because you give him a 6-up ward, maybe with an artifact of power, or I can't remember if it's at whatever it is, but you can give him a 6-up ward, and then with that -1 attacks, his base is so big that everything is going to be in combat with him. And the Maw-Krusha is anti-infantry, so if you put him just like right up the center of the battlefield, everything gets in combat with him, everything's on -1 attacks, you know, units can't pile into him as nicely, and then he's just going to use his Ren just to pound through whatever infantry is front and center of the map. So, like, I don't know. I can't think of a situation where they're better to take. Like, for example, I think a Hacken crew is better every single time for 270 points. So, F tier, B tier. I know that in the comments, I know immediately if I put them in F tier or B tier, I know that there's people that are going to tell me why they're good. And it's like, people are going to make some good arguments. But the truth of it is, the reason that, for me, they're so butt low is because of their mobility. They can't go anywhere. So unless you're going to really just shove them up the middle of the table and be like, yeah, he's just going to get stuck in on turn 1, turn 2, and then for the rest of the game just grind in the middle. It's like, I can see that. I could see like Bodyguard, Life Swarm, 6-up ward, Maw Crusher crushing in the middle of the table against a bunch of Rock Guts, right? He's got a lot of wounds on a 3-up save. If you have a 6-up ward, if you have a little bit of healing. So you know what? I'm going to stick them both at B tier for that, just for that reason. I think that Gordrakk, he's just better against the monsters, right? There's not really a lot of artifacts that we're taking this edition on the Mega Boss on the Maw Crushes. So because of that, like in third, the fact that Gordrakk couldn't take an enhancement meant that he was sort of F tier, right? Like you'll never take him over a regular Maw Crusher. But this edition, because there's not enhancements that we're trying to put on the Maw Crusher, that I think it's, you know, the difference is significantly smaller, and you know, and then they both have that 3-up save, which is quite nice. So. But I don't know, the thing about both of them is that, like, there's nothing else really going on their War Scrolls that I'm finding, like, really super important and impactful, right? Like, if I look at Gordrakk, it's like he's got, like, his Voice of Gork, where he gives +1 to hit during the WA, that might be the best one, you know? Like, it might actually be the best one. Strength from Victory is like, the game is less deadly and slower and grindier, so I'm finding that Strength from Victory is going off a lot less, so it's a lot less impactful. And I'm still unclear because it doesn't affect companions, right? Hold on. I guess it does affect companions, but the WA doesn't affect companions, but I think Strength from Victory does. Anyway, the monster grapple on a 3-up, have the attack characteristic of companion. It really is situational, you know? Like, if your opponent doesn't have this, and it's not in front of him, it's kind of like, well... So it's like, you know, he's on a 3-up save with 20 health, but he's kind of slow and he's huge. Fly doesn't matter, so I don't know. I'm just not feeling the Maw Crushers right now, to be honest with you. And the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher, like his... Destructive Bulk, where it's like on a 2-up D3 mortals but double it against infantry. Don't forget, there's still a 1 in 3 chance it does nothing, right? So a couple extra mortal wounds against infantry is not game breaking by any means. Strength from Victory, and then he has a 2d6 pile-in instead of a 3-inch pile-in, which is nice in theory, but in practice he's so big he can't go anywhere anyway. You know, he's always stuck. So how good is a 2d6 pile-in when you can only pile in a 1-inch anyway? So it doesn't feel like super impactful. They're basically just beat sticks that are offering almost no utility this edition. And I don't know if you can have a 450 point beat stick that's offering no utility and play it in your army. Like in 3rd edition, the fact that they would Mighty Destroyers 3 units was amazing. It was very strong, right? And like Fasten, Mighty Destroyers, like Destroyer, but just not anymore. Okay, up next we got the Big Pigs. So I'm gonna take the Tusk Boss and I'm gonna put him at B tier. I think the Tusk Boss is good if you want to run a bunch of Big Pigs. If you're like, I'm playing Big Pigs, then he's good. The Regiment of Renown, I think, is probably the best way to play the Big Pigs. I think so. So. It's like, what is it? Tusk Boss, Gore Gruntas, Hack and Crew. It's just all the pigs, right? So, yeah, I mean, if that's your playstyle, go for it. But play the Regiment of Renown, I think. I think Big Pig spam is not, like, super good in Ironjawz. So, having said that, the Hack and Crew, I think, is an S tier unit. I think the Hack and Crew is one of the best War Scrolls in this army. Like, where is it with Hack and Crew? There it is. You know, 12 health on a 3-up save. The 3-up save is really nice. That's something that the Gouger doesn't have. He has a 4-up save. But really what it is that makes this unit S tier is the Carve a Path. rampage that he has. So it's once per turn in your movement phase, but essentially he gets to like retreat and charge again and take his momentum back up again. So you mobility on big monsters is really good. The mobility is 10 inches, right? He gets to move 10 inches and then he gets to charge again. So it's like he has his own way of keeping his own momentum up really high. So with an all-out attack, this thing, the Tusks is 5 attacks, 3s and 2s. Again, this is with +1 to hit. 2 rend and 5 damage, right? Like, it's 25 potential damage with 3s and 2s and 2 rend. Like, it's really, really good and really, really strong, and I'm never sad that I have a Hack and Crew on my list. Every single list I start with always has a Hack and Crew in it for sure. Yep. Very, very good. The Gore-Grunted Gouger is also very strong, but I don't think that he's quite at the S tier. I do, however, think that he has a strong A tier. Cheaper, 220 point monster is a pretty good deal, and having a Strike Last ability is also really good. And of course, you roll a die and you add your momentum, and you need a 5 up. So if you have 1 momentum, you need a 4 up. If you have 3 momentum, you need a 2 up. So if you can get that run on turn 1 and then that charge later and get the momentum up, and then, just even on a 3 up, if you can give Strike Last on a flank, that's really strong and really good. And these big pigs don't degrade either, which is really good. Mega Boss on foot. I don't want to, but he might be F tier. He might actually be F tier. Hold on, let me just pull this up real quick because I want to make sure that I'm getting all my facts right. So the Mega Boss on foot is 230 points. So he is 20 points more expensive than Zogrock Anvil Smasher. And Zogrock Anvil Smasher might be our best buffing piece in the army. The problem with the Mega Boss is that, well, first of all, he only works with brutes, so he doesn't work with Ard boys. So for the Mega Boss on foot to be good, you kind of need to have 20 brutes. I think that's where he shines, is when you have 2 reinforced brutes, one on his left, one on his right, him right in the middle, and then he can give out these +1 attacks. Right? And like it just kind of makes me sad, right? Because in your hero phase, when you get this Get Stuck In Lads ability, the +1 attacks lasts until the start of your next turn. So it's like, it's going to last for your turn and your opponent's turn. The other one that he does on a 3-up is until the end of the turn, which is fine, right? Because it makes the brutes punchier on your turn, but still have +1 attacks on your opponent's turn. And then the strength from victory, like I said before, doesn't feel that impactful this edition. And then this Mega Boss doesn't want to get into the fight. He has a 3-up save, but he only has 8 health. So if he gets into the scrum, like, he's probably going to die. So the strength from victory doesn't feel as important. He's pointed like he's a fighting foot hero and a buffing foot hero, which is unfortunate because he's quite expensive at 230 points. And then the reality is, like, if I were to pull up, let's say I pull up my math here, right? But it's like, so if you add +1 attack characteristic to a unit of 5 brutes, you're going to add, every attack that you add against a 4-up save is going to do about 2.5 extra damage. And that's it for 5 brutes. So, like, it's actually, like, it's decent, but I just don't think it's, like, as... Think about it this way, okay? You're going to take a unit of brutes, and you're going to give them +2 attacks. Okay, fine. What if they have -1 to hit? What if your opponent is giving them any kind of debuff, like -1 to hit? Well, suddenly, it's like, yes, you have all these dice, but I don't know. I feel like the other ability on your turn should have been +1 to hit. If it was +1 to hit, it would be so much better. But right now, if I see an Ard boy, or if I see a Mega Boss, I say, like, well, running reinforced units of brutes doesn't feel very good, and he needs probably 2 reinforced units of brutes to be good, and he's way too expensive. if you're playing a Mega Boss on foot, I suggest you just try Zogrock. I think Zogrock's going to be 20 points cheaper and just better and good in different situations. Being able to throw anyway, we're not talking about Zogrock. So, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking he's F tier right now, unfortunately. I know people are going to disagree with me on this. Let me know in the comments below. Come join the Discord. Tell me what you think. War Chanter's either A tier or S tier. Is he an auto include in every list? I think he is. I think that our +1 damage prayer is just so bloody strong. And priests in general right now, the ability that you can like build up these points and then unleash them when it suits you best. I think that that plays really well into the War Chanter. The Killabeat being on an 8-up, right? It means that you chant on your opponent's turn a lot and you build up these points. And then when you need them, you can unleash this +1 damage on 1 unit, but hopefully 2 units. And +1 damage is a huge buff, even though it only lasts until the end of the turn. The fact that you can do it on your opponent's turn or on your turn, I think is really, really strong. Also, with Weird Fist, he's also giving out a 6-up ward to all the infantry units that are wholly within 12 of him. And yeah, I mean, +1 damage is just so good. It's just so good. Zogrock Anvil Smasher is going to be an A tier unit for me. I think he's maybe like the War Chanter is really good and Zogrock synergizes really well with him, right? If you're giving +1 damage and then you're like, well, 6s are mortals, well, that's 2 mortals now instead of 1, so the 2 of them together work super really well. But I think that the War Chanter's buff I think is better overall. And he's also only 120 points. Is really cheap, right? Zogrock's 210. But Zogrock is maybe the only way in the army that we can deal mortal wounds. If you're coming up against like -1 to hit, if you're coming up against really high armor, if you're coming up against Ethereal from Nighthaunt, whatever it is that you're coming up against, having some way to deal mortal wounds is good. And if you're playing Ard Boys in a reinforced block, it's 41 dice. So if 6s are mortals, right? Like if we just look at this really quick, 41 attacks, right? A third of them is going to be 6.84, and then if we have 2 damage, you know, like now suddenly Ard Boys are pumping out 14, 15 mortal wounds, you know, that's enough to get rid of a couple rock guts, maybe 3 if you're lucky. So, you know, he's just like a utility piece, and he makes the army a little bit less weak to its weaknesses, if that makes sense. You're giving me -1 to hit? Okay, cool. 6s are still mortals, right? So I'm still going to get some, push some damage through, right? So, A tier, very good. Weirdnob Shaman's going to go to S tier. I think all the wizards right now are most likely S tier. The best wizards in every book are S tier. We need to play that manifestation game. The fact that he can be a power level 2 wizard when around a reinforced unit of Ard Boys feels good. So he's just going to sit behind the Ard Boys and throw out manifestations or banishments, which is good. Ard Boy boss. I think the Ard Boy boss is probably going to be the very bottom of B tier. Unfortunately, I just don't think the Ard Boy boss is very good at all. So 3-up save, 6 health, 4 move, 2 control, like whatever, no big deal. His profile, 7 attacks on 4s and 3s, 1 round 2 damage, whatever. You don't want him in combat anyway. So what he does is he lets a unit of Ard Boys rally 3 extra dice if they're wholly within 12. So this is probably not going to happen over the course of a game, right? Because they're going to be stuck in for the vast majority of the game, being like this Tar Pity frontline unit. So you're not going to rally them, right? Like you're just not going to. And then even when you do, you're getting back with 3 extra dice on average. You're getting back 0.75 extra Ard Boys, if I remember that math correctly. Right, because on average you're getting 1.5 extra, like you're getting 1.5 points from these 3 dice. So that 1.5 point is going to mean you get like 1.5 Ard Boys back. But if there's a 50-50 chance that they're already injured, right? So I don't know. But the probability that he's actually contributing a lot is very little. And when he is actually contributing stuff, it's like an extra model. So it's like, ooh, he gives 1 model a game if you rally, and it costs that CP. So you have to want to do this first. And I just don't think it's high. It's not very likely that you're going to do this anyway. So It's like, what is he in practice? What is he actually doing with this rally? Most of the time, nothing. Most of the time, you're going to get no value out of this ability. And then his other passive, Get Bashin'. So this lets you add one to the shield bash rolls for Ard boys while they're wholly within 12. So you're going to get this off once a game, right? Shield bash only happens when your opponent charges into you on, like, if you're really lucky on like particularly, you know, whatever, like games, on close games where you're going to get to use this ability a lot, you're probably going to get to do it 3 times. So the shield bash is for every unit. So if you have 20, right, what you're doing is you're changing it for the amount of mortal wounds from 3.34 to 6.68. So this ability, so this Ardboy boss, right, is actually adding about 3 mortal wounds every time you shield bash. So once or twice in the game, on a good game, but he'll probably always do it once, you know, because you'll probably get charged at least once. But it does happen in a nice timing. It happens in the combat phase, like before the fighting begins. So some of that charges you is going to lose like a model or 2 before you even begin. So that's nice. But for his point cost, another thing I should mention about him too is that he can be taken as he's like a head stomper or whatever. So he can be taken by Gordrak, Megaboss on Maw-Crusher. So by units you're not taking, right? He can be taken without a drop by units you don't really want to take. So if he could be taken by something that we did want to take, that would make him a little bit better. But again, overall, it's like you're not really going to be rallying very often with Ard boys, and the shield bash is like a once per game. So for 3 extra mortals. So the reason that I'm going to stick him in B tier and not into F tier is because if you're running 2 reinforced units of Ard boys and you can somehow manage to keep this guy wholly within, and maybe he's in the general's regiment and on Maw-Crusher and he's offering the bodyguard, like then I could see him being played over literally any other unit, but it's very, very small. For me, he's going to be the very bottom of B tier. Brutes. I'm going to leave Brutes for now. I think Gorgruntas are F tier. Unfortunately, they were the best unit for Ironjawz in all of 3rd. No exception. But their War Scroll this edition has seen them take a huge hit. So they're sort of designed to be anti-cavalry, right? Because the Orcs attacks have anti-cavalry +1 rend. When they charge, they do like a 2-up D3 impact mortals, and you get to add 1 if it's cavalry. But again, don't forget, 1 in 3 chances this deals nothing. This ability does nothing. There's a 1 in 3 chance, or there's a 66% chance it's adding a single mortal wound. So that ability is kind of low. And then the thing that really kills me for this unit is that while the Orc on top, so it's 3 attacks, 4s and 3s, 1 rend. So it's only 1 rend. 1 rend, 1 damage, gets extra rend. So if you have 3 units or 3 models in a unit, you're throwing 10 dice at 2 rend, 1 damage. So that's not bad. But the Grunt of Tusks gets charge +1 damage, is a companion weapon, 4 attacks on 4s and 2s, but it has 0 rend. So that the 2 damage attack gets 0 rend. So what a waste. It's like you're putting this +1 damage on an attack that your opponent's going to save all the time, and you're giving +1 rend on a 1 damage attack. If it was anti-cavalry +1 rend charge +1 damage on the Choppas or Hakkas, suddenly I think this guy's actually sick. It's like on the charge, he's going to deal double the damage, and then if they're cavalry, they're going to get even more of this through, but they just put the keywords on the wrong profiles. So I just can't see it. And then for 190 points, there's no way I'm spending 190 points on this unit. He's almost as much as 5 Brutes, which are going to be a lot better. So unfortunately, I just like B tier. F tier's too harsh. Let's put him in B tier because if there's tons of cavalry in your meta, I think he's okay. If you really need another flanker, you know, and like if you only have 1 big pig and you need another flanker and you have exactly 190 points, it's like, okay, I can see that situation. So I think Ard Boys are S tier. Let's move on to Ard Boys. Ard Boys are S tier. I think they're going to be in every single list that you make. Without a doubt, I think a reinforced unit is kind of an auto-include right now to help the Weirdnob get that extra power level. Like, seriously, I could see a list with 2 Weirdnobs standing behind a reinforced unit of Ard Boys, so you have 4 casts. Dealing with those manifestations is going to be important, so if you have 4 banishes, or if you can cast 4 endless spells, like, that's a crazy turn 1. You know, another thing too about orcs right now is that there's not a ton of spells in the orc book that we actually want to cast. The great big green-handed Gork is not as strong as it was because you have to be wholly within 24 of the caster. It just means that like you can't be sending them like way off into the corner behind your opponent. So the great big green-headed Gork is a less powerful spell. Mighty Edbud is situational, right? And it's only against wizards and it only deals 3 damage. So it's like, it is, it also should really be the unlimited spell. And then this like Basham Lads where it's like you have crit 2 hits. Like, it's not amazing. It doesn't stack with the Zogrock buff, which is what you really want to be doing. Throwing out like it's a fine buff, you know, like it's not a bad buff. Like if because I did all the math, right? But for brutes, like Basham Lads actually does more than the Mega Boss does with one additional attack, but it's not doing as much as Zogrock. It's not doing as much as Kill Beat. Right, so like it is a fine buff, but if you are playing Zogrock, which I often am, then it doesn't really stack. So you just want to throw endless spells. You just want to, if you have more endless spells than your opponent, that's good. You know, keep casting more. And if your opponent has endless spells, just banish, 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 banish. Do nothing but banish. If your opponent has endless spells on the table and you're playing Ironjawz, banish. Don't cast your spells. You don't need them. Just get rid of your opponent's manifestations, and then once you're ahead on like once they have none, start casting your own. I think that's definitely the way to do it. Just get rid of their manifestations. So I think Ard Boys are going to be there. Rekkas, F tier. I've played them once, and it was as the bodyguard to the Maw Crusher, and it was only because they have a 5-up ward. But realistically, like being 130 points, they're cheaper than the Ragers, but they're just not very impactful. If I pull up their, I'm just gonna pull up their profile here real quick. Rekkas, so 5-up save, right, 4-inch move, 3 health, and they can run and charge. So for 10 more points, you also get strike first, which is awesome. Ragers are dealing 3.6 damage per 100 point just on their own, and Rekkas are dealing, no, that can't be right. No, of course that's wrong. That can't be right. This math is making no sense. Oh, this must be 10 Ragers? Sorry, 1 second. I need to straighten this out. Okay, so Ragers, this is for 6 Ragers. That's why my math was confusing me. So Ragers are going to deal 10 damage against a 4-up save. Okay? And this is if, like, so the Ragers have anti-monster +1 rend. And the Rekkas have anti-infantry +1 rend. So if they're not fighting their preferred target, okay, Ragers are going to deal 10 damage, which is 3.6 per 100 points, and the Rekkas are going to deal 8 damage, which is 3.1 per 100 points. If the Rekkas are fighting infantry, they're now doing the same damage that Ragers do versus infantry. I'll say that again. If Rekkas are fighting their preferred target, Ragers deal the same amount of damage. They deal the same amount of damage, okay? Some things that are a little bit different. Zogrock works a little bit better, like on Rekkas relative to Ragers. Ragers are still gonna deal more damage, but the Rekkas increase their damage by a greater percentage than Ragers. So, because they throw more dice, but every mortal is less. So, if you have 6 Ragers, you can deal 10 damage. 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 10 if you have reinforced Rekkas and you give them Zogrok and you give them Mighty and you give them Violent Fury and they're fighting into Infantry, I think the Rekkas might pull ahead in damage by a little bit. But the huge difference between the Ragers and the Rekkas, the thing that really separates them, is that the Ragers have Strike First if they charge, and the Rekkas have a 5-up ward. Well, it's a 5-up save. So when they die, they're just going to kind of die. So what you want them to do is to be able to deal their damage before they die. That means Strike First. The Ragers are so much better than the Rekkas because they have Strike First. Where the Rekkas are going to be F tier, I think the Ragers are A tier. Sorry, S tier. I think the Ragers are S tier. I think that the Ragers are definitely our best infantry unit. Like infantry hammer by a lot. I don't think that, like, it's not even... If you wanted to play a Mega Boss on foot, you would be really playing them with Ragers, because they have the Brute keyword. But the biggest problem with this is that the Ragers can run and charge, so they're going to get out of range of this Mega Boss on foot pretty easily. And so they're going to run in, they're going to throw their damage with their Strike First, and they're probably going to get killed, and then the Mega Boss has nothing left to buff, right? So it's like, what are you going to do about that? But the Ragers, I think, are S tier. Strike First, anti-monster, and, like, they slap. Like, versus monsters, like, they're getting up to 12 damage for 6 of them, which is 4, and, like, this is getting into that range where it's gonna, like, one-shot kill a monster. If the monster has a 5-up save and no ward, or if it has a 4-up save and no ward, the probability that you're gonna run in and one-shot it is high, and the probability that you're gonna one-shot it if it had any damage on it already, like if your Bull Boys, for example, shot... Sorry, that's not the right army. Sorry. If they got shield bashed, or if they had any other form of damage, the Rages are going to come in and hopefully Strike First, delete that monster off the table. So very, very good, very, very strong. I think that a reinforced unit is an auto-include in every single army. Okay? And then Brutes. I don't know what to do with my poor Brutes. I just don't know what to do with them, because they're not S tier, that's for sure. I don't think that they're A tier. I think that 400 points for a brick of Brutes, you know what? They're A tier. They're almost S tier. I'm really torn on Brutes. And here's why, okay? Whenever I think of Brutes as, like, the way that I thought about them in 3rd edition, which was take a brick of 10 and sick them at something, I think they're a lot weaker at doing that now than they were before. But whenever I think about a 5 squad of Brutes standing on an objective and just utilizing their U-Messin ability to keep an objective out of an opponent's hands, I think of them as being really strong. That's the thing. It's like, don't buff your Brutes right now. Send them to stand on an objective. Either a home one, a middle one, or someone that you're contesting on the opposite side of the map. Teleport the Brutes forward so that they can slowly walk, run, mighty destroyer their way onto an opponent's objective, and then just scoop it from them because they're trying to control it with some kind of chaff. Right? Don't forget that if the enemy has a health characteristic of 1 or 2, they cannot contest objectives. This U-Messin ability is such a strong ability. So 15 wounds on a 3-up save, all by themselves, standing on some lone objective and holding that objective is a really powerful ability. But putting them together in bricks, and so that's the thing with reinforcing them too, right? Is that if you have 2 times 5, they can be in 2 different places. And you're not going to buff them. You're just like, off you go. And then everything else, your Ragers, your Ard Boys, your Pigs, is what you're going to be spending your time buffing and what you're going to be spending your time, like, actually investing in. I think is kind of the way to go. So, play them in 2 times 5. I think that they're A tier. In reinforced bricks, standing beside Mega Bosses, looking to actually win and fight and grind, I think they're probably B tier. right? Then it's like, well, they're only actually decent if you can have the right buffs beside them, but they might actually just be at the bottom of the list and be F tier. Okay, so what do you think? Here's my list. The only thing I'm really kind of not sure about is the War Chanter and Zogrock. Sometimes I want to swap them and put Zogrock Anvil Smasher as an S tier, but I don't think that Zogrock is mandatory, a necessary inclusion, you know? I think that if you're like, oh, I want to play a competitive list, I'm like, cool, start with the reinforced unit of Ard Boys and a War Chanter, take a Hack and Crew, and take at least one reinforced unit of Ragers. Like, I'm confident on these 4, right? If I see a list that it doesn't have these 4 things in them, I'm kind of like, well, you should have those 4 things in them. You should do that. But the War Chanter and Zogrock, are they both just S tier? Are they both just A tier? I can't make up my mind. I probably need more games. I got about 4 Ironjawz games under my belt now, and my wife has been playing them, so I've been watching her play them on the other side of the table. And yeah, like more Ragers is good, right? Like the more Ragers you play, the better. You can just play Rager spam with Kragnos. Thanks, Aaron, for that. So I don't know. +1 damage is really good. Crit Mortals is really good. Both of them together is even better. I like to buff Ard Boys because it helps you win the fight in the middle, and if you can win the fight for the center, it just makes the rest of the game a lot easier. So if you have Ard Boys with their 3-up save and a 6-up ward, and then they're getting Crit Mortals with +1 damage, right? Suddenly it's like they can actually win that fight. Suddenly they can win the fight in the middle and pump out lots and lots of damage. So that's been my go-to right now, is just the Weirdnobs are there for manifestations, right? So, I don't know. I think I'm just going to go with my original take, that if you're only going to have one buff, is it better to have a War Chanter or a Zogrock? I think it's better to have a War Chanter. So, yeah, here it is. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that nonsense. The best way to support the channel is through Patreon. So, like, subscribe. Wah.